Hello everyone. So in this video we're going to have another look at a simple JavaScript example just by looking at a simple JavaScript one function calculator. So this is actually going to be a relatively easy little JavaScript applet that we're going to make here. And to save us some time, I've already developed our HTML markup here. So if you want to get caught up, you might want to go ahead and pause the video here if you're going to follow along and just go ahead and copy down our HTML. Let me zoom in so I can show that to you a little better here. But what I've done here is I've just created a simple HTML form. We have two text inputs for our numbers. We've given them a name. We've given them an ID. Because as we've kind of seen previously, using the ID selector makes things a little bit easier for us when it comes to writing our JavaScript. So at this level, where we're at right now, using the ID selectors for our elements is going to make things a little bit better for us. And I've just put in a little bit of placeholder for user experience sake, just so our users who are using this kind of know what to put where. So it's first number. We have a span with our plus sign. And then another input for our second number, and the button represents our equals sign. So they'll click the button and get the answer out to the side. So it's just a left to right written addition equation that we kind of have here represented as a little HTML form. So fairly simple, fairly straightforward, easy enough. So what we're going to do here is basically just make this function to create a basic one function calculator. So the one function is going to be addition. With where we're at with JavaScript, since we're just kind of introducing it, I don't want to get too deep into it, but we can take this kind of concept and expand it. If we wanted to make a four-function calculator, which is something that I, do at a later level, like we would probably do it in the next class. What I would typically do and have done before is just make radio buttons that represent the other functions that we want to represent, and use conditional statements based on the value of the radio button that is selected. But we don't want to get too deep into the JavaScript here. We're just kind of keeping it mostly surface level, because that's the scope of what we want to do in this introduction to the markup course. So we're going to head over to our JavaScript pane. And I'm actually going to make it just a little bit wider because it's what we're going to be dealing with here. Maybe make it a little bit narrower so it can fit into my zoomed in view. And we're going to start writing some JavaScript. So let's create a function. And we're going to call this function add_up. And remember that we can call this function basically whatever we want to call it, just so long as it doesn't start with a number and doesn't contain any symbols other than our underscore, and doesn't have any, and isn't one of the JavaScript reserved keywords. And then we add our braces or curly brackets, whatever you want to call them, in order to kind of encapsulate our code that's a part of this function. So from here, we're going to create a couple of variables. And in the last video, we kind of talked about what variables are. Variables kind of being a container that's going to hold some kind of data. And the data that we're going to hold here is going to be the value that our user, whoever is using our website, inputs into our form fields. So for the purpose of this site, we're going to create a variable of x, And we're going to set that equal to document.get element by ID num1, and then the value of that element. And we will create another variable for our other input. We'll call it variable y. And we'll set that equal to document.get element by ID num2 dot value. Now, this is good, but we really don't want to stop here when it comes to creating these variables. Because what we have here would get the values from those form fields, and it would work, but it would pull them in as strings and not numbers, right? So if we pull them in as strings, we can't really do math with them as we're used to doing math. So what we want to do is we want to take these inputs here, and we want to kind of wrap them inside of another function that will convert the string to the number that it is. So we want to take this and we want to use the parseInt function, which is included in JavaScript. And wrap that data value up in that parseInt function. So that will take that string and convert it into an integer so that we can do the math that we want to do on it. There are other ways that we can do this here, but we're just keeping this as simple as possible for the scope of this project. You know, we just want to keep this incredibly simple. This is just a super beginner, super primer here. So we don't really want to get too deep into it. There are a whole bunch of other ways that we could do this. So we don't want to get really too deep into this. So that's as far as we're going to go. So now all we have to do is we have this empty span here in our HTML markup that we've given the ID of ANS, or answer. And so what I want to do is I want to take my answer and put it in there. And we will do that in a similar way that we kind of added our circles to our element in our last video. So what we're going to do is we're going to take document.get element by ID ANS, so we can find that element in the DOM, and set the inner HTML of that element to be x plus y. So the value in our two variable containers added together. So it is just as simple as that. And I'm going to go ahead and save. So that's all we really need to do in our JavaScript to get a basic addition function calculator here. So now I'm going to head back over to my HTML. Now all we have to do is implement this into our HTML. So on our button here, I want this to happen on click. So I want to be able to execute the function when we click the button. So I'm going to add the onClick attribute. And I'm going to set that equal to the name of our function, which is addUp. So that will tell my code to run this addUp function whenever this button is clicked. Now, since we're doing this in a form, whenever we click that button, it's going to try to submit the form. And whenever we try to submit the form, it's going to try to go to a new page. But we're not using a new page here. We're just using some form fields and a button to kind of make us a little calculator. So we need to tell our markup not to submit the form, to stay on this page after the button is pressed. So in my form tag now, I'm going to add a new attribute of onSubmit. And I'm going to set that equal to return space false. So now it won't return the form and everything will stay on this same page. And we can do math. So we can select our first form field. We can enter a number, select our second form field. We can enter our number, and then we can click enter and get a result. So 4 plus 8 is 12. And then we could style this in CSS however we wanted. And that's actually something that I'd leave up to you in this instance because, you know, by now you all know how to style forms. You know how to style text. You're experienced in this. So take this from here and customize it how you wish to make it look how you want. You know, maybe you want to add a caption to your form. Maybe you want to add some nice styling to make this look interesting. Do whatever you want to do with your calculator. But we can see that, you know, whatever we do to our form fields here, we can add up simple numbers to get a result. So it's a pretty cool, pretty neat little script that just makes a simple little applet on our web page, which is fun. You know, it's fun to have the power to do that sort of thing, and that's what we're doing here. So that's all that I have for you for this example. You know, take this from here and do what you will with it. Thank you for watching.